Echo from the Bridge. Chapter 1. Secret Meeting. The city of Florence in 1891 carried the rhythm of tradition and the weight of old rules. During the day its streets were full of merchants, artists, and families, but at night the city grew quiet, and the Arno River reflected the pale light of the moon. On one of its old bridges, Clara Benedetti walked slowly, her steps soft against the worn stones. At 24 years old she was a young teacher, respected for her discipline and admired for her intelligence, yet inside she longed for freedom. Her family expected her to follow their strict rules, to marry someone chosen for her, and to live a life of obedience. But Clara's heart carried another dream, a dream of love that was not approved by those around her. Andreas Müller also walked toward the bridge, his violin case held close to him. At 27, he was a German musician who had come to Italy searching for inspiration and a place to belong. His music gave him a voice when words failed, but his life was marked by solitude. He was far from his homeland, and though Florence welcomed his talent, he remained an outsider in the eyes of many. Meeting Clara had changed him. Her presence gave him warmth, her laughter gave him courage, and her eyes reminded him that love could exist even in silence. Yet he knew their relationship was dangerous. Her family did not approve of him, and the city carried whispers that judged those who broke tradition. The bridge became their refuge. Its stones were old, its arches strong, and its silence deep. Here they could be themselves, away from the eyes of others. Their voices were whispers, not because they feared each other, but because they feared the world beyond the bridge. They spoke of their dreams, of the lives they wished to live, and of the freedom they longed for. Each word carried risk, but each word also carried hope. The bridge seemed to listen, its stones absorbing their secrets, its shadows protecting their love. Clara felt alive in those moments. She was no longer the obedient daughter, no longer the teacher bound by rules. She was a woman who had chosen to love, even when love demanded courage. Andreas felt the same. He was no longer the lonely musician, no longer the outsider. He was a man who had found someone who believed in him, someone who gave meaning to his music and his life. Together they created a world that existed only on the bridge, a world where love was stronger than fear. Clara and Andreas met secretly on the old bridge across the Arno River. Their steps were quiet, their voices whispered so no one could hear. They knew their love was dangerous because their families did not approve. But the bridge became their refuge, a place where they could be themselves. The night carried their whispers, and the stones of the bridge held them, as if love itself had found a way to leave a trace. Their secret meetings were not only about passion. They were about courage, about the choice to live honestly, even when honesty carried risk. The bridge became more than a place. It became a witness, a silent guardian of a love that dared to exist. Chapter 2. Whispers in Stone. The nights in Florence carried a quiet beauty, and the old bridge across the Arno River stood as a silent guardian of countless stories. Clara Benedetti and Andreas Müller believed their whispered words vanished into the air, carried away by the wind and lost in the flowing water below. Yet something unseen lingered in the stones. Every confession, every laugh, every trembling word of fear seemed to sink into the bridge itself, as if the stone had memory. The bridge did not simply hold their footsteps, it held their voices, their secrets, and their love. Clara never imagined that her longing for freedom and her hidden affection could leave a trace beyond her own heart, but the bridge listened, and the bridge remembered. Clara was a young teacher, and her life was shaped by rules and expectations. She taught children during the day, guiding them with patience, but at night she sought her own lessons in courage. Her family demanded obedience, yet her soul demanded honesty. On the bridge she spoke softly of her dreams, of the life she wished to live, and of the love she wished to protect. She believed her words were fragile, but the stone beneath her feet absorbed them, turning her whispers into echoes that would last longer than she could imagine. The bridge became her diary, a place where her voice was preserved even when she feared it might be silenced by the world. Andreas was a musician, and his life was shaped by sound. He carried melodies in his mind, and his violin gave him a way to speak without words. Yet with Clara he found another kind of music, one made of whispers and shared secrets. He spoke of his loneliness, of the years spent far from home, and of the hope that her love gave him. His words were quiet, but they carried weight. The bridge seemed to take them, to hold them, and to keep them safe. Andreas believed that music could live beyond time, but he did not know that his whispered voice was also being kept alive, hidden inside the stone arches that stood above the river. The old bridge keeper sensed this mystery. He had watched the bridge for decades, and he knew that it was more than stone and mortar. He felt the presence of voices in the silence, as if the bridge carried memories of those who crossed it. When Clara and Andreas came at night, he did not disturb them. He saw their shadows, heard the faint rhythm of their whispers, and understood that the bridge was recording their fate. He believed that love had a way of leaving marks, and he knew that these marks would remain long after the lovers were gone. The keeper did not speak of it, but he carried the knowledge quietly, guarding the secret of the bridge as carefully as he guarded its stones. They did not know that their words somehow stayed inside the stone of the bridge. Every confession, every fear, every laugh was recorded by an invisible force. The old bridge keeper felt this and understood that the bridge became a witness not only of their love but also of their fate. The whispers in stone were more than echoes. They were lessons, preserved for those who would come after, reminders that love, courage, and honesty could survive even when time tried to erase them. The bridge became not only a place of meeting but also a place of memory, carrying the voices of two souls who dared to speak the truth of their hearts. Chapter 3. Shadow of the Past. The nights on the bridge carried more than silence. They carried memories that rose quietly in the hearts of Clara Benedetti and Andreas Müller. Clara often stood with her hands resting on the cold stone, and in those moments she remembered her childhood. She had grown up in a house where rules were stronger than dreams. Her parents believed that discipline was the path to respect, and they expected her to follow every tradition without question. She remembered the long evenings when she sat by the window, watching the world outside, wishing she could step into it freely. She remembered the lessons in obedience, the warnings about reputation, and the constant reminder that her life was not her own to shape. Yet even as a child she carried a secret hope, a belief that one day she would find a way to live honestly, guided not by fear but by courage. Andreas carried his own shadows. He had spent years studying music in Germany, surrounded by teachers who demanded perfection and audiences who expected brilliance. His violin had been his companion, but it had also been his burden. He remembered the endless hours of practice, the loneliness of rooms filled only with sound, and the silence that followed applause when he returned home alone. Moving to Italy had been his attempt to escape that emptiness, to find inspiration in a new land. Yet Florence, with all its beauty, had not erased his solitude. He remained a foreigner, admired for his talent but never fully accepted. His whispers to Clara carried the weight of those years, the longing for connection, and the relief of finally being seen not only as a musician but as a man with a heart. Together their whispers created a bridge between past and present. Clara spoke of the strict rules that had shaped her, and Andreas spoke of the loneliness that had followed him. Their words met in the air, soft and fragile, but strong enough to weave a story larger than themselves. The bridge became more than a place of secret meetings. It became a place where two lives, marked by different struggles, found unity. Clara's search for freedom and Andreas's search for belonging were not separate paths. They were threads of the same fabric, woven together by love and honesty. The old bridge keeper sensed this connection. He had watched many people cross the bridge, but Clara and Andreas carried something different. Their shadows were heavy, yet their whispers were light. He felt that the stone beneath them absorbed not only their words but also their memories. The bridge became a keeper of their past, holding the strict childhood of Clara and the lonely years of Andreas, preserving them as part of a larger story. The keeper understood that their love was not only about the present moment. It was about healing the wounds of the past and daring to believe in a future shaped by courage. Clara remembered her childhood, the strict rules of her family, and her dreams of freedom. Andreas remembered his years of music study and his loneliness in a foreign land. Their whispers connected their past and present, creating a story bigger than themselves. The shadow of the past did not disappear, but it became part of their strength. They learned that love was not about forgetting what had been. It was about accepting it, carrying it honestly, and allowing it to guide them toward a life where truth mattered more than fear. The bridge held their voices, and in those voices lived the lesson that the past, even with its shadows, could become the foundation of courage. Chapter 4. Trial. The city of Florence in 1891 was full of watchful eyes and careful tongues. Rumors moved quickly through narrow streets and crowded markets, carried by whispers that grew stronger with each telling. People began to speak of the old bridge across the Arno River, saying that it had become a place of secret meetings. Some claimed they had seen shadows moving there at night. Others insisted they had heard voices carried by the wind. Families who valued tradition and reputation grew suspicious, and the name of Clara Benedetti was quietly spoken among them. At 24, she was known as a teacher of discipline and respect, but now she was suspected of breaking the rules that had shaped her life. Clara felt the weight of these rumors pressing against her. She knew her family demanded obedience, and she understood that discovery would bring shame and punishment. Yet she also knew that her heart could not be silenced. Each evening she walked toward the bridge, her steps careful but steady, her mind filled with both fear and determination. She thought of the lessons she taught her students, lessons about honesty and courage, and she realized that she must live by those same words. Her love for Andreas was not a mistake. It was a truth, and she believed that truth deserved to be lived, even when the world judged it harshly. Andreas Müller carried his own burden. At 27, he was a musician admired for his talent but still seen as a foreigner. The rumors reached him too, and he felt the cold distance of those who looked at him with suspicion. He remembered the loneliness of his years in Germany, the silence that followed his music, and he feared that Florence would turn against him. Yet when he thought of Clara, he felt strength return. Her presence gave him courage, and her love gave him meaning. He understood that their meetings were dangerous, but he also understood that without them his life would return to emptiness. The bridge was not only a place of risk. It was a place of belonging, a place where he was no longer alone. The old bridge keeper watched these events unfold with quiet eyes. He had seen many stories pass across the stones, but Clara and Andreas carried something different. Their whispers were not only words of love. They were words of defiance, words that challenged the rules of families and the weight of tradition. The keeper sensed that the bridge itself absorbed these whispers, holding them as proof that love could exist even in the face of fear. He did not speak of what he saw, but he understood that the trial they faced was not only about secrecy. It was about courage, about the choice to continue even when discovery seemed certain. Rumors about secret meetings began to spread. Families suspected that the bridge had become a place of forbidden love. Clara and Andreas understood that their secret could be revealed. But they continued to come, because love was stronger than fear. The trial of suspicion did not break them. It shaped them, teaching them that love was not only about passion but also about strength. They learned that courage was not the absence of fear. It was the decision to walk forward even when fear surrounded them. The bridge became their witness, holding their whispers as lessons for the future, lessons that would one day remind others that true love demanded honesty, even when honesty carried risk. Chapter 5. Keeper's Decision. The old bridge keeper had lived most of his life in silence, watching the city change around him while the bridge remained the same. At 60 years old his hair was white, his hands were rough from years of work, and his eyes carried the weight of many nights spent alone. He had guarded the bridge faithfully, repairing its stones, sweeping its paths, and ensuring that it stood strong against time. Yet he knew that the bridge was more than stone and mortar. It was a place of memory, a place where voices lingered even after they faded into the air. He had felt this truth many times, but it became stronger when Clara Benedetti and Andreas Müller began to meet there. Each night he saw them arrive, their steps quiet, their voices soft. He did not disturb them, but he listened from the shadows. He heard their confessions, their laughter, and their fears. He understood that their words were not ordinary. They carried the weight of love, the courage of honesty, and the risk of defiance. The keeper believed that the bridge absorbed these whispers, holding them as if they were carved into its stones. He realized that their story was becoming part of the bridge itself, a story that would remain long after the lovers were gone. The keeper faced a choice. He could betray them, reveal their secret to the families who suspected forbidden meetings, and protect his own reputation as a guardian of order. Or he could remain silent, allowing their love to continue, and trust that the bridge itself would guard their voices. He thought of his own past, of the years when he had loved and lost, and he felt sympathy for them. He remembered the pain of silence, the regret of choices made too late, and he decided that he would not add to their suffering. He would protect them, not with words but with silence, and he would keep their secret safe. Yet he also understood that secrets could vanish if they were not preserved. He began to write small notes in his own records, describing the nights when Clara and Andreas came to the bridge. He did not write their names, but he wrote of their voices, of the way the bridge seemed to hold their whispers, and of the feeling that love was stronger than fear. He believed that one day descendants would find these records, and they would understand that the bridge had been more than a place of stone. It had been a witness to courage, to honesty, and to love that dared to exist in silence. The old bridge keeper saw them every night. He understood that their words would remain forever. He decided not to betray them but to keep the secret in records that descendants would one day find. His decision gave him peace, for he realized that his duty was not only to guard the bridge but also to guard the truth of the human heart. The bridge became a keeper of voices, and the keeper became a guardian of memory. Together they carried a story that would echo across generations, reminding those who came after that love, even when hidden, could leave a mark that time could never erase. Chapter 6. Last Night. The night air in Florence was heavy with silence, and the old bridge across the Arno River seemed to wait for something it already knew. Clara Benedetti walked slowly toward the familiar stones, her heart trembling with each step. At 24, she had carried the weight of her family's rules, the burden of obedience, and the secret of her forbidden love. She knew that tomorrow everything would change. Tomorrow she would be separated from Andreas Müller, the man who had given her courage to dream of freedom. Her eyes were filled with tears, but her steps did not stop. She wanted this last night to be remembered, even if it was only by the bridge itself. Andreas Müller arrived soon after, his violin case held close as if it carried not only music but also his soul. At 27 he had lived with loneliness in a foreign land, but Clara had given him belonging. He knew that their love had been fragile, hidden in whispers, yet it had been real. Tomorrow he would be forced to leave, and the emptiness of his past would return. But tonight he wanted to give his heart fully, even if it was for the last time. He looked at Clara, and in her presence he felt both pain and hope. Pain, because separation was certain. Hope, because their love had already left a mark that could not be erased. The bridge stood as their witness. Its stones were cold, its arches strong, and its silence deep. Clara and Andreas whispered softly, their voices trembling but steady. They spoke of their dreams, of the lives they wished they could live together, and of the courage they had found in each other. Their words were fragile, but the bridge absorbed them, holding them as if they were carved into its memory. The old bridge keeper watched from the shadows, his heart heavy with understanding. He knew that this was their last night, and he felt the power of their voices sinking into the stone. He realized that the bridge was not only keeping their words. It was keeping their love, preserving it for the future. Clara felt her soul torn between fear and strength. She wanted to hold on, to fight against the rules that separated them, but she also knew that some battles could not be won. Andreas felt the same. He wanted to stay, to resist the forces that pulled them apart, but he understood that tomorrow would bring an end to their meetings. Yet neither of them allowed despair to take over. Their whispers carried hope, the hope that their love would live beyond them, that their voices would remain even when they were gone. They believed that the bridge itself would remember, that one day others would hear the echoes of their hearts. One night Clara and Andreas came to the bridge for the last time. They knew that tomorrow they would be separated. Their whispers were full of pain and hope. The stone of the bridge accepted their words, keeping them for the future. The last night was not only about loss. It was about courage, about the choice to speak honestly even when silence seemed safer. Their voices became part of the bridge, part of its memory, part of its truth. And in that truth lived the lesson that love, even when forbidden, could leave a mark stronger than time. Chapter 7. Echo of Generations. Decades passed, and the city of Florence changed with time. Streets grew busier, new buildings rose, and families carried on with their lives, but the old bridge across the Arno River remained. Its stones were worn, its arches carried the weight of history, and its silence still held secrets. The whispers of Clara Benedetti and Andreas Müller had not vanished. They had been preserved in the records of the old bridgekeeper, hidden away in his careful notes and in the memory of the bridge itself. For years those records lay untouched, waiting for someone to discover them. It was the descendants who finally found them. They were curious about the past, searching through old papers and forgotten archives, and among them they uncovered the writings of the bridge keeper. At first the words seemed simple, descriptions of nights on the bridge, of shadows moving quietly, of voices carried by the wind. But as they read further, they realized that these were not ordinary notes. They were the preserved whispers of two people who had loved in silence, who had spoken honestly even when the world demanded silence. The descendants felt as if the voices of Clara and Andreas were speaking directly to them, crossing the distance of time. The records revealed the courage of Clara, a young teacher who had lived under strict rules but had chosen to follow her heart. They revealed the loneliness of Andreas, a musician far from home who had found belonging in love. Their words carried fear, because they knew discovery would bring punishment, but they also carried hope, because they believed that love was stronger than fear. The descendants listened to these voices and understood that they were not only reading history. They were hearing lessons meant for them, lessons about honesty, courage, and the strength of feelings that refused to be erased. The discovery changed the way the descendants looked at their own lives. They realized that love was not only about passion or desire. It was about truth, about the choice to live honestly even when honesty carried risk. They saw that Clara and Andreas had left behind more than whispers. They had left behind a legacy, a reminder that love could survive beyond time, beyond silence, and beyond fear. The bridge had become more than stone. It had become a keeper of voices, a witness to courage, and a teacher for generations who came after. Decades later, descendants found the records of these whispers. They heard the voices of Clara and Andreas, their love and their fears. These words became a lesson for new generations. Love can be stronger than time, but it requires honesty and courage. Moral: love leaves traces, even if people try to hide it. The true strength of feelings is in honesty and the courage to live for them. Thank you for your attention. If you like the story, please like and subscribe. It motivates us to make new videos and helps us promote the channel. Thank you.